Hello everyone, today I am looking at El Shaddai, Ascension of the Metatron. Oh my god, it's been a while since I've even looked at this game or even thought about it, but it's something that has stayed rent-free in my head from time to time, as this is one of the weirdest games I've ever played. I mean, the number one weirdest game is going to be Killer 7, but this game is... I feel like it came out of nowhere, and it's like, hey, let's take ancient Christian and also like Jewish folklore religion and make a game based on that and make it high-tech society along with a bunch of other stuff. And I love this game. I mean, it's not that fun, but it is so extremely painfully interesting and visually fascinating. Where do I, oh my god, where do I even begin? So you play as Enoch, and so the biblical Enoch was a character who, as far as we know, was the only character in the Bible who was essentially born. He lived for roughly 600 years. He was Adam's great-great-great-great-grandson, so maybe 6 or 7 generations after, the fall of man. And he's the only human, essentially God... it says in the Bible, he took him up into heaven. And so it doesn't say specifically that he died, but he was taken up. And so you're taking this ancient part of like old biblical literature and turning it into a psychedelic fantasy action game. I love this idea. I love that style of game, and what they've made, even if it's not the best action game ever made or whatever, visually, stylistically, in terms of dialogue, it is terribly fascinating and terribly cool. And it's something now that after I've actually read a lot more of the Bible, I'd actually love to come back and replay this game because it feels very interesting. So the gameplay isn't too complicated. Again, I feel like it's kind of God of War light. You have your light attack, your heavy attack, and you have 3 different weapons you get throughout the game. And it's not like you unlock them. You actually have to steal them from enemies. And when an enemy is in a weakened state, you basically press R1 or something to purify them. So you will basically do this cinematic attack, and steal their weapon from them, and purify it and turn it blue, basically. And from doing that, you will basically be able to use the weapon from there on in. And it's a little bit tedious, honestly, because your weapon will wear down eventually, so you have to keep doing this purification thing, but it's still pretty cool. So you get one which is kind of this like rotating blade which can then shoot arrows, another one which is like this weird gauntlet that then also shoots guns and stuff, and all these bullets go around you, and it actually looks really cool. And then I think the final one is like some kind of big like heavy shield that isn't really fun to use, but yeah. Again, another character in this game is Lucifer, who is, depicted as like the good guy devil. I'm just trying to help out kind of thing. So you have, you just have this ancient part of this ancient literature, and because it's so, without so little context, you're allowed to basically do anything you want to it. And so I love this game stylistically, thematically. It's so fascinating, and really it's kind of like an action set piece exploration thing. There are like little collectibles, but they're always off on the beaten path. You're gonna have like a left choice and a right choice, and the left short path to the guy with the collectibles, obviously like always the obvious answer. So it's not super deep in terms of its exploration. It's basically combat and story and crazy stuff just going on. And there's also these huge time loops and time gaps, and so it feels a little bit, I guess, realistic. Something I have to say about this game too is the sound design is top notch. Oh my goodness, it is so good. For example, like just the main menu sound effects when you file select, when Enoch purifies a weapon, when he fights an enemy, the sound design is like really well done. And so, and just the main menu, I have to admit, is my favorite main menu in all video games, because it has this absolute zen track with this light humming that feels abstract and bizarre, and It feels like this game almost is like a video game form of the Book of Revelations rather than Genesis. It has that insane feeling of abstract, weird things happening, and some of the enemies are abstract shapes themselves. And so is this story about Enoch going up to heaven with God? Not exactly. It kind of ends up with Enoch essentially being sent on a mission. He's basically God's scribe, but he's sent on a mission essentially to go down to Earth to round up the Grigori, who are the fallen angels who rebel against God, and go down to Earth and essentially teach men the art of warfare and weapon making, and basically pollute God's creation. And so you are charged with assembling or retrieving the 7 or 8 fallen angels known as the Grigori, and defeating them in battle and bringing them to justice. And I guess on that note, I have to admit it's a little bit disappointing or anticlimactic that when you get to the final boss or after the final boss, you actually don't get to defeat Metatron. I don't know why. Maybe there's like a biblical lore reason why that is, but it just kind of ends with Enoch being like, oh, I guess we won't get the final angel or something. There are also other characters in the story, such as Ishtar, who I think appears as like this young woman with a like a weapon and green hair or something. And it's really interesting because Ishtar is an ancient Babylonian or like Sumerian goddess. So they're not doing purely Christian lore here. They're also mixing it with other lore of the same time period, which again kind of gives it a weird feeling of authenticity because it's like all these things are kind of happening at the same time. Again, I think it's really cool, and at the very least, you can appreciate El Shaddai for its visual aesthetic and styles. There's this one place that looks like a moving watercolor with bonsai trees. It looks really, really amazing, really cool. I love it. Again, there's no upgrades, there's no kind of long-term thing. You were literally going through these set pieces, doing kind of pretty much repetitive, mindless combat, but it's the visuals and the graphics and the music and the aesthetics and the dialogue that really keeps you captivated. This really feels like a video game made by aliens from another world. It feels really, really super interesting and dynamic and weird in its stream, and I absolutely adore it. And so the way Enoch actually takes damage is that his armor will fall off as he gets hit, and so you basically have to stay in the battle and basically collect hearts and stuff like that to repair your armor. But yes, you literally have the power of God and anime in this game, and it is an absolute joy to play. It's super abstract, super weird, and just the tone of some of these scenes, they feel like action scenes, and some of them feel like weird comedic scenes. It's really hard to tell sometimes. Probably one of my favorite moments in this game is when you go into the futuristic city and you have this absolute banger track playing, and you get like this weird knight armor that looks like it's out of Doom Eternal, and you get this motorcycle from the future that you use to like go through the city, and it's this very like high speed, high paced level that kind of asks only like a little bit, but it's a lot of fun. It's also funny now that because this is not a very popular game in general, which I think might as well be a good thing, whenever I see someone with a t-shirt or a sign that says El Shaddai, which, oh, by the way, is like Aramaic for God Almighty, I just laugh really hard because all I think of is this game and its absolutely bizarre, bonkers like story, and just the dialogue from Lucifer and Enoch is just really, really entertaining and funny. And just the fact that you have this weird intro too, where he's talking about how it happened 15,000 years ago and about Adam and Eve and all this other stuff and how complex and abstract it all is. This game is going to appeal to a very small subset and group of people, but to those individuals that find out about this game, you should absolutely play it. It's an absolute joy. There's nothing about this game that really, I would say, makes you a better Christian, except that it'll really get you interested in the actual lore and the ancient stories from this time period. But yeah, this is I don't think this is a religious game per se. It just really takes the lore from the time and abstracts it to such a ridiculous degree. It's honestly fascinating. Anyway, guys, there is not much else I can say about this game except that it really needs to be experienced. There's so many weird, cool, abstract little moments, and again, I feel like this is something that you could play a few years apart and pick up on something new and interesting. And again, it's so off the walls and so interesting and weird and dynamic that I love it when Japanese people are like, oh yes, Christian lore, let's tackle that. It always works out to something at least interesting, if not that. And yeah. Anyway, guys, with all that said, I'll see you later. Bye bye.